want to see so much that I can become. That's why I'm reaching for the sun. I see my possibilities. Just hope something I can feel in me. Nothing but green. I'm looking for the counter track. To the head, I won't look back. I see
الحمد لله رب العالمين وبسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. And Assalamu alaikum, a special Assalamu alaikum to my wonderful hostess with the mostest. Alhamdulillah.
So happy to be here.
How you doing, sweetie? Oh, I got to light you up on Blog Talk.
Today
my bad. I'm gonna get this figured out. I'm gonna get it figured out.
No worries.
Hold on.
You there?
I'm trying to have a smooth beginning. I messed up the chat. Y'all, hold on. We're gonna do a take 2 on this thing right here. See how it go. All right. We're going to do a take 2. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. How we doing?
Alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah. Very, very good. My Mondays are starting to get better and better because I've shifted my schedule. So this feels good and natural and I'm ready. And, I've had time to give my brain time to get ready for this conversation. And so it feels good. Being prepared just changes and shifts the whole way you move.
Yes, it does.
So I'm learning that, being prepared is just like that's the way to go, right? So yes.
Yeah. You're never a brownie or a Girl Scout. I know that for a fact.
I was a brownie.
When were you a brownie?
I was a brownie at Clara Muhammad School.
I got flashes in my mind just now when I said that of you in your little brownie uniform.
Yes.
Hey, you see how things happen? You got to be reminded. Yeah, you were. I see it.
Oh yeah,
now.
Well, you have a bunch of girls. I think I was the only one that was in brownies or Girl Scouts. The other ones had other activities, that they were in. But so I understand it's hard to compartmentalize. We become a blur at one point.
Yeah, we be building. Alhamdulillah, I'm gonna get out the way. And let you bring what you brought, so it'll be brung, all right? It's on you.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all that are watching us through YouTube, watching on Facebook, listening on Blog Talk Radio. I am Camila Shuaib. I'm the CEO and owner of Love is Always the Subject, and we create spaces for us to harness the power of the written word in order for us to really dive into our authentic self and our highest potential. I felt the need to give my full like title, because I'm working on how, the introduction world, as I continue to do like podcasts and, or lives and interviews. And I'm saying this as a lead into this idea of language and belief that came up a great deal in the conversation. And I happen to catch, because I'm sure when the imam comes back, we will talk about that. I happen to catch the part of the imam's clip that was played even before the interview that we listened to. And so I'm gonna have to get a sidebar of getting that whole, where can I find the rest of that? Because it was very much on point with where my mind is at. So this idea of like, I can't help but to think about language. I found this podcast. I was on my way to my sister's house yesterday, and in studying, I have this thing called studying the masters, right? Master teachers or people who study and so forth. So usually when I'm on social media, there are usually individuals who will put up clips of past interviews, or people will share clips of them. And so this guy, Tom Lebu, I've never known his last name, right? He, a bunch of his clips, he has such a wide variety of individuals that he does interviews with. And I find his interviews just like, very good. He has a great collection of minds that he brings together to have the conversation. So this thing about, I'm big on, on attracting what you're looking for. I'm big on, manifestation. I'm big on living in the energy of a thing that brings you what it is that you're praying for, asking for, meditating on, journaling, all of those things. So I'm driving to my sister's house, and I was like, I'm not going to listen to music, because our drive to our house is maybe about 35 minutes. I'm like, we're going to I'm going to do some mind feeding, right? Because all the books I had on Audible, I finished. So I was like, let me look for a good podcast. First time I found a podcast, I was listening to it, and the quality of the podcast, it wasn't great, but they created it, right? That was my sign to pay attention to. Sometimes we move in this space of wanting something to show up with perfection, right? As opposed to excellence, right? And there's a difference between perfect and excellent. So it's like the perfection is to think that you will never find a thing that will need to be improved upon, right? The story that's even coming to my mind, even in that, a great thing that I got from my dad is when we worked on his audio book, he had, he in him reading through it, he said he noticed some typos, and he said, I recognize the perfect book is the Quran, and so it's like there's this perfect, but the book is excellent. And if we put this thing of perfection on something, we would keep stagnating our growth. But now when we find a thing that we do, my first journal I put out, it has so many typos in it, I just took it off the shelf. I was like, not doing it. I was just, it was enough to almost make me feel like I'm never doing this again. This is my sign to say this is not the work I'm supposed to do. But in actuality, it was the mistake that made me recognize I need to hire an editor. I need to have my assistant do an additional proofread over the draft. I need to print out a sample before I print out a bunch of them. But I would have never learned that had I not made the mistakes that I made. So the project, I was striving to make it excellent. And in striving to make it excellent, I pulled in the resources and the tools necessary to get to the space of excellence, right? But even after I create, it's like, yeah, I feel this is excellent. I feel that we're there. That even after that, the evolution of what it is that I created required that I continue to nurture it and really squeeze it for it to evolve into something else, right? So this whole idea of like, looking back at my, when I think about like this language, right? This language and belief. These were the things that stood out. But in the drive, I found this guy's podcast. I listened to the first one and I was like, the quality of it, it made me feel like, okay, I can't really listen to this. It wasn't giving me the experience I needed for this long drive. But I understood because on social media, they are huge, right? I mean, they're the biggest deal. And so when I listened to the podcast, I was expecting to hear a different kind of studio quality of it. But I said, good on him, though. He was like, I'm covering all platforms and I'm still going to engage with the people. And he has listeners and he has followers. And, so it's like, for me, it was like, Camila, you keep delaying certain things because you think it's supposed to show up a certain way. Just show up, strive for the excellence, right? And in you striving for the excellence, you can perfect it over time, but if you can't perfect a thing if you don't pull the trigger. Like, you just got to launch, you got to go for it. So I found this podcast, and when you open up a podcast, there's a bunch of episodes, just a bunch of episodes, and I just happened to just pick one. And I just happened to pick the one with Wall Street Trapper. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Wall Street Trapper. There hasn't been an interview of his that I haven't heard that made me go, yeah, what he's saying is this, and I'm move on to the next thing, right? But every time I have heard him or seen him in certain spaces and how he shares his story, I get drawn to the authenticity of, when he first gave this caveat about him being a financial advisor, right? And this idea of there's certain credentials, right? That the Eurocentric world of finances, you need to have these certain kind of credentials. But in actuality, he's a finance advisor to the homies, right? Like, when you listen to the rest of the interview and he tells how he talked his other friends into understanding what they need to do with his money and how this works, he was the financial advisor, right? But this just happened to be the podcast that my finger touched. It popped up. I had no idea that he ever even interviewed, Wall Street Trapper. I've seen other interviews he's done with other life coaches and finance people who are, spiritualists and all of these different things. But this is the one that I fell on. And so I was, every time when something like that happens to me, I have this thing that I always go, okay, God, that's my way of like acknowledging that, okay, we're having a communication. We're having an exchange right now, right? Because so when it opened up and I started listening to it, it was just, I have learned to celebrate the those moments that people call coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. My brain does not compute a coincidence, right? My brain computes that, okay, this is a part of your journey. Like, this is a part of what's happening. Pay attention. I mean, down to if I'm rushing and I'm I'll be busy and I find myself being just overly clumsy for some odd reason. And then it's like, okay, hold on. I have to stop, right? And then go, okay, pay attention to, why does this keep happening? You keep dropping things. Things keep slipping out of your hands. What's going on? What is your thought? Like, when things like that happen to me, this is like an ongoing regular practice of mine that I'll stop and be completely still. And I'll go through this questionnaire of myself. Where's your mind at? What is it that you're not paying attention to? What is it that you're supposed to pay attention to? What are you supposed to be learning in this very moment, right? I am learning now. I mean, another part of my learning process is even in traumatic situations, to not always sit in this space of, I have to solve this right now. Sometimes it's a matter of, no, I need to sit in this right now and understand what are these emotions that this is bringing up for me, because these emotions are a symptom of something that needs to be cured, a symptom of something that needs attention or nurturing or needs to be eliminated from my way of living or my way of thinking, right? And so this moment of me finding this podcast and this interview was a reminder to me that, I get full every time I think about it, as a reminder to me that Allah is always listening. Even if you don't speak it with your physical tongue and words and lips, Allah is always listening. He hears your thoughts. He hears your desire. He hears, when you're seeking clarity about a particular thing. Because I've been doing a lot of work around. I said I really need to. My financial literacy is like, I need to increase that. Like this. This is the thing about like language too. I can't help but to bring it up. Like, I'm so overly conscious of trending words, right? And trending is like, that's a social media term. Like it's like what they call the hot point, or it's like those hot point words that newscasters use before social media, that before they tell the whole story, they'll start it at the climax. Like, when the truck went over the curb, the explosion took place. And now everybody's sitting at the edge of their seat, waiting to fill in the blanks that led to this explosion of the this, or this. Or it's like, okay, well, why is Rihanna walking away from music after this, and this? And now everyone's on the edge of their seat because we want to know the answer to that question. It's like the Jeopardy of interviews, right? They tell you the answer, and it's like, okay, now lead up. Tell me the story that leads up to that. And so in this whole thing of really understanding these moments of knowing that Allah is hearing you, like, I have to sit still in that, like, really, because I have this conversation with so many of my clients. Like, sometimes things happen, and the first thing I ask is, were you asking for clarity about this, or this? Were you asking about what is the thing that brings you joy or happiness? Were you asking for more patience? Were you asking for, like, oh, you know what? God, I need my financial situation to be stronger. And sometimes it'll show up in this way that, you get the final notice in the mail and you're just like, oh, this is the final straw. I give up on dealing with money, or whatever the case may be. When in actuality, it's like a doctor showing you, this is where the pain is. This is the symptom. Okay, so we got to do surgery here. This is the area we need to do the surgery. So symptoms are a mercy. Symptoms are a gift. And when you get that answer from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatest of all things, the very reason why we exist, why not celebrate it? Yes, it might pinch initially, like, well, what am I going to do with it? It's like, first you got to just sit still a minute. You asked for the answer, right? And here's how this answer is showing up. Sit still in that and pay attention, and then all of the things that you need to unfold will unfold, right? And so in me finding that podcast and hearing this conversation and how you chose this story, the first thing that I always kind of go to is that there is a significant emotional event that always happens in our life, to where we can choose to take the route of Adam, Adam being, submitting and striving to be our best. And I almost feel like there's a part of us that it may need to be more Abraham even. And, I'm a student, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I carry them both with honor, because there's always room for improvement, right? So there's always this opportunity, I say Adam and Shaitan, because that is the opening story. That is the story of really recognizing our worth, right? And when Allah had breathed into Adam and told the angels to bow, and the jinn shaitan said, no, I'm better than him. We have the proclivity to do that in a particular situation, that a traumatic situation can happen, and we can choose to just be like, bump it, this what I'm going to do, right? Or we can be like, okay, I know that there's an opportunity for greatness in this very moment. There's an opportunity for, or I'm just going to destroy everybody else because I don't feel that I'm worthy. No one else is going to be worthy, right? And that is a huge stigma within our community, in the lower income community, or within the Black community, however it chooses to show up. It doesn't always show up in the area of poverty. It doesn't always show up in, oh, I live in the project, so if I ain't ish, you ain't ish, and I don't care about your life because I don't care about my life. It doesn't always show up like that. It shows up in the spaces of how Black women, collaborate and work with each other. It shows up in spaces of whether you choose to be jealous or work with someone in order to be better and to be greater, right? And in the interview, he made a very powerful statement about adding value to people's life. Adding value to people's life. And this adding value is, we're not talking about false praise. We're not talking about, in my mind, that's not what I'm thinking about, right? This adding value to people's life is the Moses method and how I approach business and how I approach anything, right? That, like, my organization, She Win, We Win, is built off of the Moses method. You want your business to be better? Help other business people be better. You want to strengthen your marriage or your relationship? Then work with other couples in strengthening and working through their relationship. Those who it's like those the best among you is he who learns the Quran and teaches it. You want to develop a stronger relationship with Quran? Teach it, because you know something. Even if it's just, I only know Al-Fatiha. Oh, then you good. I only know Surah Ikhlas. Well, you good. Teach that. Pour yourself into that. And in you pouring yourself into that, you now have an opportunity to, it'll spark a flame for the next thing that you are. So it's like, okay, Surah Ikhlas. Okay, well now, there's a lot. This word is in here a lot. So let me figure out some more about it, because now I have more things to talk about, right? And now you're learning at the same time that you're enriching someone else's life because of how a particular thing has enriched you. This moment, this platform and these conversations that we have every Monday, and the spaces that we've created with A Clear Understanding Institute, these spaces are to pour value into the individuals that consume the information that's there, because now you walk away more enriched, like, okay, let me study some more about language and how do I take the knowledge that I have and put it in a language for the people that I come from, right? I put this little note here about that Allah sends us messengers for the people who speak the language of the people, right? And there's a language of hip hop that has evolved over time, and I'm not talking about the colonized hip hop, right? Because right now we know there's just a straight up one type stream of what they want for hip hop, because it's just wants to feed into the lower desires of individuals and not from a space of, pay attention to what's happening into society. Understand? I grew up in the pay attention to what's happening around you. Pay attention to the politics. Who is it? I love my mama. I do the, like these things. Flex. He mentioned something about flexing, right? Tom. Those who do not know, Tom is a white dude, right? And flexing in the Black community is what we do. We flex. Our grandmamas flex, our great grandmamas flex when it was time, and church was the flex station, right? Who had the church hat, because that was our opportunity with the level of regalness that's just written in our DNA and how we showed up. So this idea of flex has nothing to do with arrogance. It has to do with the adornment of really, putting a spotlight on my light. It's like my Umi says, shine your light on the world, right? Shine your light for the world to see. That's a flex, right? And that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Because we need to see the possibilities of what is able to be achieved. This idea of shrinking oneself because we're afraid of, we don't want to show the possibilities, that is what maintains the mindset of those that come around. That maintains the generational poverty, right? And I hope that we have come a long way as an audience and as those that's listening to understand that poverty is not dollars and cents and what's in our bank account. Money is easy. So when I talk about wealth or poverty or mindset, I am not talking about decimal points and numbers. I'm just not, because that's easy. It's as easy as the air that you're breathing. When we change how we talk about what we're worth and our value and what we bring to the marketplace and what we bring to others' lives, that part of it is what will open up a whole nother world for us. A doctor is only a doctor because they know the language, because they know the doctor's books and the definitions. You become wealthy when you understand the language of the wealthy. And what was taken is that this language needed to be given to a population of individuals who had zero access to this conversation, these conversations and these words, but he had to translate it, right? It had to be translated in a language that the people that he comes from could understand. And now it's like, oh, okay, you made the complex simple. You made the complex simple. And the simplicity, like, it ain't simple for me because I don't know that language, but I know hip hop. So I understood this, so when you say the trap, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where we cooking up the ideas and we putting together what's going to hit the streets, right? So there is some language that goes across the board, but at the same time, it also provides this opportunity to say, yeah, you can shift the way you think. You can use fire to cook your food, or you could use fire to burn the man. Like, what are you using this fire for? And that makes all the difference in how it is that we move. I am almost certain my 6 minutes are up. 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh, you're on. I guess I'm still in my little hip hop mode. So, brother, you, ma'am, you let me know. And I'm good.
You good? 2 minutes, Dougie Fresh.
Okay.
Close it out.
2 minutes. Here it is. There is a unique experience. Our tagline for our company is control your narrative. There's a unique experience that you have had. And this unique experience that you have had there are the people that you have not come in contact with and people who identify with your experience, that you have the ability with your language to liberate them because of your experience. I don't know what it is, whether you have survived homelessness or, survived a abusive relationship or survived poverty, or coming from, coming back into Islam, or a better understanding of Islam to where you have been able to live. There is something that has happened to you. And that experience, you are to take that experience to translate it to those that can identify with your story in order to liberate them, in order to put value into their lives, right? So, but you got to know your story. What's your story? Is it your story, or are you adopting somebody else's because it's cute? Right? It's like, are you just taking on somebody else's story based on, oh yeah, well, this is no. What's yours? Because the one that you have is the story that will liberate others. And that right there gives you wealth. That is wealth. Your language is your wealth, because now you have liberated a whole community of people and generations, inshallah, over time, if you understand what your story is and how do you translate that story to others in order for them to be liberated. So with that,
Alhamdulillah.
I thank you guys for your
Allahu
time.
Akbar.
I'm so grateful. And let's start the conversation. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah. Before I rush off, anybody on Blog Talk, if you have a comment or question that you want to give to my co-host, I know I'm getting some funny kind of static on my side. Who knows? I don't know what it could be. But go ahead. You can push one on your phone. We see what happens. We can see comments on the Facebook and YouTube side if you have them. If not, then we're gonna do this. Let me. Okay. Maybe that's what's better for me. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any comments. So we're gonna go on. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for your presentation. I know you'll be there. You all, I'm switching the view with my beautiful co-host. She will still be in the studio. All right. Alhamdulillah. All right. Alhamdulillah. So what I wanna continue on is the idea, in fact, the title under the episode itself for us is the basics versus the fundamentals of the basics versus the fundamentals of wealth creation. And that is where we want to take off from. And I'm going to slow myself down right now because if I can just make one of the points that I came to make, I would be very pleased. All right, I want to remind all of you who are with us right now that this broadcast on Blog Talk Radio actually begins at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. And so there's a lot of conversation that follows the audio portion, which is what we normally play. We play an audio of some type before we actually have this part of the broadcast. And so a lot of the comments are tied to that prior broadcast. As I did today, maybe I will make it a practice to include that in the comments in some way, so that those of you who join us after it's played, you'll be able to either have access to it or at least know what the references are. But we listened to Wall Street Trapper being interviewed on the platform, as Camila said, and the title for the actual link is "These Principles for Success are the key to winning the game of life." So those of you who are with us on the Friday broadcast, then you know that we just started a series, Taqwa and the Game of Life. So that was also very, very attractive and how can you say significant for using it today as well. So in part, there was a big statement, his turning point, his significant emotional event, along with being in prison itself, was when he it must have been solitary. He says solitary confinement. There's a different kind of solitary confinement. But in any case, he came in contact with a wealthy white convict, right? And this wealthy white convict basically told him that you don't even know it's a game, and you're playing a game that you can't win. You're playing a game you can't win. You don't even know it's a game. So it's literally like it is like a movie where the quote unquote the hero of the story, the one that's going through the character arc, finally gets to this place which seems to be the bottom of the dregs of his situation, like not like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm Little when he was in prison, and how he was transformed in that process. So there's an ongoing regular motif in the life of people from that demographic. And so this white convict gave him that information, and he evolved. That is the Wall Street Trapper. I got to get his name. He evolved at various points. He started reading, and in his beginning to read, he talked about a Sister Soldier book that he read. I think The Coldest Winter Ever, or something like that. I don't know it exactly, but Sister Soldier, The Coldest Winter is in the title, but I think it's The Coldest Winter Ever. He was very moved by that book, but then he also, just in the habit of reading, or returning or gaining the habit of reading, being in prison, he found himself reading a lot of the hood story publications, and then he's recognized that, hey, I keep reading the story, and it's the same story all over, so I don't need to read that story. I've actually lived that story. So then he changed his menu of reading, but the fact of his becoming more literate and reading in the process was a part of his significant emotional event. That's so very important. And I want you to, if you don't already, if you've been listening to me for years, as I recognize that many of you have, then you've heard me say over the years, speak to or speak about significant emotional event. And let's understand the importance of that, because that's a package that you can apply to, okay, what happened to Malcolm when he went through that experience? Significant emotional event. Malcolm Little became Malcolm X by virtue of a significant emotional event. Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, and indeed he became the champion boxer that he was upon a prior significant emotional event, actually going to the gym, in the basement of some hotel somewhere. If you haven't seen the documentary that Ken Burns has put out on Muhammad Ali, you got to see it. And this is just round one. It's very, very enthralling, very inspiring, very informative. But again, Cassius Clay had a significant emotional event that moved him into boxing as a skill set, as an interest, right? And then, of course, Cassius Clay had a significant emotional event that moved him from being Cassius Clay to being Muhammad Ali. And that's an ongoing, you can actually call it a mythos, hero's journey. It's that kind of thing happens in all of the great stories. My co-host, one of her favorite stories is The Count of Monte Cristo. The same kind of thing happens there. The Evie Hammond transformation in V for Vendetta. For her, that's a significant emotional event. The point is that when you have a significant emotional event, that is an event that changes your life, your mind, actually your frame. I can take it all the way back to, and this segues into another point, that the shamans, right? The shamans, you can say witch doctors, or what have you. That's more pejorative term, but the shamans, and when we're talking 5,000, 10,000 years ago, in that early anthropological setting, those people who had that kind of insight and who had that role in a tribe, in a civilization even, their role was helping to bring about personal transformation, helping to bring about transcendence, helping to move the people of their tribe and of their civilization from lower levels to higher levels of awareness, enlightenment, etc. And what they would do is what is called frame breaking. Frame breaking. So why is frame breaking important? Frame breaking is important because if you have a certain frame that you're operating from, mindset is the words that we use on a regular. So the mindset, if you have a certain mindset, this is what was spoken of in the interview, it's like it becomes an intergenerational mindset. And if that mindset is a limiting mindset, then every subsequent generation is going to have the same kind of limitations on their behaviors and their actions. And so the shaman, they would develop ways by which they can break frames. And this is a part of what happens with rites of passage. Rites of passage are actually frame breaking experiences, right? You were a boy, now it's time for you to be a man. You were a woman, you were a girl, now it's time for you to be a woman. You were at this level, now it's time for you to go to the next level. So they create rituals, they create rites, they create experiences that are designed to break your prior frame and help you transcend and transform to the next higher level. Now, we're not living 10,000 years ago. We're living right now, but the significant emotional events are still always happening and are always necessary. But of course, they don't always end positively, because sometimes significant emotional events only result in a person getting broke down to the point where they can't even put themselves back together. They call it a nervous breakdown. They're broken down and they don't know how to reconstruct themselves, put themselves back together. But if in having the experience of significant emotional event and you have a way of understanding the function of significant emotional events, then you can use that significant emotional event to your benefit, which is when we listen to stories like the one we listened to today. He was in a situation where he could positively reconstruct himself, break down the old thinking, break down the old mind, break down the old frame, break down the old mindset, and then come into a new, reconstructed by having a whole different menu that he consumed for as far as knowledge and perception is concerned. Now, quick lesson. Human beings go through the imprinting, modeling, socializing phase. Imprinting phase 0 to 7, modeling phase 8 to 14, the socializing phase 15 to 21. And he talked about all the things that happened to him when he was like 10 years old, saw his mother get shot in front of him, 14 years old. His mother is in prison. His grandmother dies. He becomes homeless. He goes to Maryland, I believe it was. His own relatives were hesitant to take him in when they did. He still got into more and more trouble. So all this was going on in the 8 to 14 stage. And also literally, another label for that period, not just in the hood. It is called the gang stage. It's called the gang stage. And so to have those kinds of experiences at that particular age, it was kind of like the perfect storm for corruption, criminality, etc. And he experienced that, right? And so now 16, tried as adult, goes into prison, or is put in prison. So it's like then that's like criminal university, right? And he talked about I'm talking about Wall Street Trapper, and he talked about how he got his game set up inside the prisons. Utilizing institutional resources and also utilizing sources that he could bring from the outside and organizing, his runners inside the prison itself. So obviously he was a very intelligent young man who had the ability to be real creative no matter what his situation was in. So there is something that can't be overlooked there. But the point is that he could have went a whole lot of other ways, and I counted, and I'm left for me. I would assume he does too, kind of as a grace of Allah to him, if not Allah, God, Jesus, whoever. I don't know who he's believing in terms of the higher power. But let's get beyond that. This significant emotional event is something that when you go through these stages, imprinting, modeling, socializing, when you get to 10 years old, 90% of your personality is formed by the time you're 10 years old. The other 10% of your personality is formed in that socializing stage. and it's formed by you socializing with people who were socialized like you, who came up like you. They have similar, temperament, similar orientation, etc. They are like you. That's what we say. I like him. And one of the reasons you like him is because he's like you, and her the same. So consequently, the 90%, by the time you're 10 years old, the other 10% comes during the socializing phase. That is your mindset. That is your frame. That is who you are. That is, as Quran says, "Kul kulu ya'malu ala shakila, farabbukum a'lamu man huwa ahadi sabila." Says it is everyone acts according to the way that they've been socialized. So this is this shakila is you can hear the word shackle in it. So that, and shackles made of iron, right? So that and the train runs on tracks, right? They run on tracks, and that's what it's called. It's called a train. The train on the track is made of iron. The train itself used to be called the iron horse, right? What is it all to say? It's like that train is going to stay on the track. That train is not going to be able to move off of that track. All right. So it is with the way that we get socialized. We get socialized, and that socialization is like iron in our life. We are locked in. That is our mindset. The only thing that can change that a human being, once they've been socialized in a certain way, is a significant emotional event, right? Now, for some of us, it was the Nation of Islam, the Yaqub's history and all the other message that came there. That, as we call it, blew our minds, right? And that's what we needed. We needed our minds blown so the frame could be broken. So that's why when Imam Muhammad would sometimes say, pejoratively, but it's still truthfully, talking about the witch doctors, it was a witch doctor type move in terms of that WD-40 that worked on our rusty locks. All right. So alhamdulillah, I'm saying those who had that experience and those who are getting the benefit of those who had the experience without going through the experience, all that is alhamdulillah. All that is alhamdulillah. If you're getting the benefit of the knowledge of those who had their frames broken by FOI, MGT, Yaqub's history, Palan Petmos, the deportation of the moon, the mothership, all the rest of that, the ducks and the lakes and all the rest of that. If you're getting the benefit from somebody who got all that and you didn't have to go through all that, Allahu Akbar, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. But Farad Muhammad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and those who spoke for him and from those sources, they were frame breakers. They would bang, 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 mind blown. And the rest of that's history. You know how deep that is. What I want to get to on in this regard, because I want you to own the idea of this significant emotional event, because I want you to understand that it goes both ways. It can go positive or it can go negative, right? Let's go with if you really want to see a model of Iblis, how he evolved. I think a quote unquote a perfect story parable for that is the Amadeus, F. Murray Abraham. I think he got an Oscar for the role he played there. It's about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and the person who really just couldn't stand that Mozart was so blessed, but he seemed to be so unworthy of such a blessing. And you saw F. Murray Abraham's character, talk about character arc, go from jinn to shaitan. Let's just put it like that. I'm just going to make it easy. And so the point is that he had a significant emotional event, but he went to the dark side. I have a lot to say about that too, not today. But he went to the dark side. So there's a side of enlightenment that you can go to after a significant emotional event. But there's also a dark side that you can go to after a significant emotional event. Stalin, when you look at his history and his wife's dying, when his wife died, significant emotional event, and man, oh man, that dude killed tens of millions of people because he was hating humanity at that time. Right? Crazy. But that's just the motif of of the reality of existence that such stories represent. Let me give you this. All right. So if you haven't had a frame-breaking experience, a significant emotional event, then you are still 90% of the person that you were when you were 10 years old, right? But if you have had such an experience, then whoever you are now is upon the way you reconstructed yourself after that significant emotional event. Now, all of us, when Allah's prophet, peace be upon him, he says everyone is born on the fifth, but it's their parents. And when you understand it, it's their culture that makes them other than the way that they have been constructed. So that's Shakila. We're given frames from the world that we're socialized in. Now, if the world that we're socialized in was itself corrupted, twisted, wrong, etc., then we're misshaped in consequence of that, right? Now, so when the significant emotional event has to come in order for you to have that frame broken and do that. For the example, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came to the Arabs of his time and those who were in the situation of the time, when the Prophet brought the revelation, and when they saw the revelation, the Prophet broke the frame that they were of the believers. He broke their frame, and then they came and they embraced it. Bilal, of course, a major figure as an example of that. So I'll make the point. Significant emotional event necessary. Which way a person goes at that fork in the road of that situation, it's a choice. It's a choice. Everybody, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, we're created in the most excellent mold and structure. All of us are. But the way we get it wrong, and that's why I'm going to now. That young man, the Wall Street trapper, as he talked about his life, anybody who's looking at this, whatever, Power Book 3 or something like Power, I don't know, whatever it is, Raising Canaan or whatever. You can take this real guy's life, Raising Canaan, I believe it is, and the Wall Street, you can do his life like this, with that movie, with him and his mama, like this, right? But he didn't come out like that scripted movie, right? Why? Because he made another choice, right? Now, the thing to be understood is that we are all made right. We're all made right. 97% of human beings don't have anything wrong with their interiority. That is the interiority of us, our brains. Most people are not born alcohol addicted or heroin addicted or crack addicted or with birth defects and all that. Most human beings are not. Yes, there are some, and of course too many. But that's not the majority. But then that's also a product of the society itself. But the point is, most of us are. What changes the minds, and now what I want you to take with you is what breaks frames. That's what I'm trying to get to. Because you have to have your frame broken if you are not on the right track. Okay? If you don't feel yourself acting consistently and with conviction on something that is valuable and that you should. And let's go both ways. If you're not letting go of something that you should let go of, is because you are stuck in a frame and a mindset that has shackled you to that way of doing and being. You can call it a habit or whatever, but bottom line, it's a frame that you haven't broken yet. And also, if there's something that you should do and that you find yourself not doing what you should do consistently, it's also because of a frame that is holding you back from doing what you should do. You need to have that frame broken, right? So the bad habits frame, that has to be broken. the good habits gain, I'll call it, that frame has to be entered into. But whatever the frame it is that's holding you back from it, that has to be broken. Now, what breaks frames? What breaks frames, right? What brings about significant emotional events, right? They all don't have to be, horrible, but there are actually three things that contribute to the transformation of who we are, either to the positive or to the negative. And the three things are these: toxins, trauma, or thoughts. Toxins, trauma, or thoughts. And I'm really holding on to the 3 T's for that purpose. It makes it easy to remember. 3 T's: toxins, trauma, or thought. Okay, so let's say, okay, here you are, whatever. You've got your 100%. You're more than 15 years old. You're 17 years old, 20 years old. I'm pretty sure most 95% of people on this line are more than 17. So that means that, okay, so you are where you are, meaning that your personality is fixed, Shakila, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but if there's some places you want to go and there's some places you want to stop going, then that applies to what I'm saying now. All right. So how are you going to change that? Toxins, trauma, or thoughts, right? So it's like from the bad side, from the bad side, that is, I need to get that. Okay. So either you're going to have to, either there's something that chemically, so I use toxins for the T, but also chemically, there's some things chemically that can be used. This is not medical advice, it's not any kind of, I'm just telling you, these are the ways. Sometimes chemistry is what will break that tie, right? Break that hold, whatever it might be. I'm not even going to use an example. But sometimes things have to be chemically arrested. Sometimes some things have to be addressed through chemistry, okay? And that's one thing. And so, excuse me, and that can go again, depending on what you're talking and who's prescribing, et cetera, that can change it. But let's shoot back to the anthropological history where you have the shaman that I talked about. One of the things that they would use the peyote, for example. I've heard of ayahuasca, etc. Even in our time, you've had LSD, etc. Absolutely, this is not a recommendation. I'm talking to you about the way that was really done. Those people, and again, they use the language witch doctor. Again, that's pejorative. But the point is that they would have an awareness of how to use it in order to break that frame. All right, so that's one side. Okay, and that also in our world right now, toxins are creating significant emotional events all the time. Drugs are creating significant emotional events all the time for people in this world that use drugs, and sometimes it breaks the frame and the person gets better. And sometimes it breaks the frame and the person is just broken, and then they're no good in consequence of that. Bad trips and all the rest of that. So the idea is that toxins, that's one side. Trauma, all right? You have a habit, you want to break that habit, but that habit could lead to something that happens that is traumatic. And because it's traumatic, that becomes a significant emotional event. And then from that, you can go left, you can go right. It can go either way. In order to change, you have to have a significant emotional event. Sometimes if you don't change in a way that you should change, sometimes Allah brings a traumatic event into your life. But he says, I just reckon up your deeds for you and recompense you for them. Let him who finds good praise Allah. Let him who finds other than that blame no one but himself. However, there is, all that's true. But sometimes Allah is saying, look, you need help to break this thing right here. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to put you in a traumatic situation where you have to, face something that you've been unwilling to face on your own. And so there it is. And inshallah, if your heart is right, if you're with God, then you'll be guided to the right. Or if you have gone overboard in like the F. Murray Abraham, like the Jinn Iblis, where Allah, he'll give you Satan as an advisor. Allah will allow you to go all the way. Like you're totally off the off the rails. Yeah, let's stay with that. Or the third one is thoughts. And seeing that one is the easiest one. I'm saying you can foment, invoke, provoke, create your own significant emotional event just by reading. Just by reading. You can read and read and read. Then one day you're going to read something that changes your entire frame. So it don't have to be drugs or toxin. It doesn't have to be trauma. It can be just reading. So now think about what Allah has said. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. If you read and make it your habit, if you're in the habit of reading in the name of your guardian evolver, then that very experience itself will lead you to some material that will change your life. Now you can say, I knew that. Okay, good. Then keep reading and focus on the thing that you really want to master. There's a lot to be said about game, but focus on the thing that you really want to master, where you want to be, and you can find yourself being changed in a way where you can create what you're missing, what you don't have right now on that. I'm going to satisfy myself with that idea, and I'm going to open up, have a little dialogue with my co-host, and I'm going to pay attention to the studio, both the chat side of the Facebook, etc., and also on Blog Talk. So if you want to join our conversation that we'll be having for a few minutes as we pass on, then come on in. So let me see what you got. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right, there you go. All right, assalamu alaikum.
Not a technical difficulty. We still rolling.
Let me. Okay, I'm not hearing you. What's going on here? Your mic is open.
Muted on blog.
Oh, your Blog Talk. My bad. I got a lot of buttons to push over here. All right, so we're good. We're alive now. What you got?
Well, a note that I didn't bring up when I was speaking, which goes to what you were just speaking about the reading, right? Mm-hmm. And I wrote this idea here is that language is more than just a collection of letters that makes words, right? Mm-hmm. And this ability to, just like what I was talking about, when I'm having an experience, sometimes I have to be still and be like, okay, what does this mean? Like, because this is happening too much. This is being too regular, my clumsiness, or, the signs of feeling tired, or how we observe nature. Like, I'm really big on observing the signs in nature. Like, to read a thing is to recognize the signs in it. Right. And there is a part of us that, there's reading and then there's comprehension. Like, you read words all day and still not get it. Right. And so it's the paying attention to when Allah says he created us growing like plants. Okay, well, let's study this plant. Like, let's see what that means. What is this? The regeneration of a plant, or its ability to to be rooted in a particular space, and how it, you know, it gets its nutrients from its environment, and all of the things like that. It you know, goes through seasons where there is not fruitful, and then it comes back and it's thriving that much more. That there are times when it's got to get cut and trimmed and take some pieces away from it in order for it to continue to thrive. So like, this is reading. This is like paying attention to all of those things. And when you get into the deeper science of a thing, you know, Imam Muhammad talks about like the science within a thing that you're like, it opens up an entire universe that you start to reflect and find yourself in it. Go on, come on in.
I mean, like, yeah, no, we have a caller. I think it's brother Taisir. Taisir, are you there? He must be somewhere else. Taisir, one more time. Okay, I think that was just a pocket call. Let me throw this in for you. Did you mute yourself again? What
No, I'm here.
Okay, good. I want to read this thing about reading, which is also a part of what. Let me say this. Those two sections of the Quran, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, to the end of the first 5 verses, and then also Surah Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran khalaqa al-insan allamahu al-bayan. That those two, when I added in, I have a note here, and we just don't have the time to go into all of it. Yeah. But when we use the language reading is fundamental, the language reading is fundamental. That's a very, very rich and broad meaning. And I'm saying an understanding and unpacking, I'll call it, of those two sections, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and Surah 55, Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran khalaqa al-insan allamahu al-bayan. Those two, if you get that, it'll take you so very far. I want to I won't go to that, but I will say this. Just a simple definition. Information is communication between the one who encodes and the one who decodes based on an agreed set of symbols, right? So if I'm going to talk to you, I have to speak to you in English, okay? So when I construct my sentences, I have to construct my sentences with respect for English grammar, all right? So that when you hear them, you can understand them because you'll decode them in accordance with the same English grammar, right? So we have an agreed upon set of symbols or a way of communicating with each other, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why we need to learn how to read what Allah has revealed in the Quran, because he said, I have revealed the Quran in Arabic in order that you might think, right? So the idea is that Allah is the coder, he's the encoder, and we the believers are supposed to be the decoder, but we can't hear what Allah is communicating until we understand the language that he's communicating to us in, right? So that's right. The reading that we have to get to, because what we have in the Quran and the life model of Prophet Muhammad, he says, I've been given the Quran and something like it, which means that the capacity for communicating big ideas in small packages, the Prophet said, I've been given that ability, and Allah has done that in the Quran. He communicates big ideas in small packages. And so we have to learn how to read what Allah has revealed and what the Prophet has said in order for us to get the real benefit of the information that is the content of what they communicate. Comments?
Yeah, no, I'm taking notes like as it goes along. So I think that the idea about the encoding, like, and I think this is where I'm trying to have this dialogue about that. How do our experience our, the imam uses the term our sensitivities, like, our eyes are covered with water, right? And that's our sensitivities, right? And so when we read the Quran, we are still reading through the lens of our sensitivities. How does that experience of us and our sensitivities as we approach scripture, that we utilize it for the elevation of ourselves and those who haven't quite figured out the code yet? My understanding of the Quran and how to embrace it and how to engage it is strongly influenced by you as my father and Imam Muhammad. It gives me a more liberated, empowered way of approaching scripture, that it makes me be able to see myself in it. Like, when I'm reading this, I'm not reading something else that's not a part of me, but how to engage into where it's like, oh, okay, oh yeah, maybe I am the Pharaoh in this situation. Like, we always want to see ourselves on the other end of a thing, right? But sometimes you might be that one, and it's calling you like a mirror to say, you might want to pay attention to this part of yourself. And it empowers you because it gives you an opportunity to make those corrections. So how do we correct our sensitivities if we're not opening ourselves to really read ourselves in the book?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's and indeed the key is in a very simple, simply expressed, but you have to, by the grace of Allah, you have to come to understand it. Where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sent. It said, we say of him, ba'athahu fil ummiyin. Allah raised him up from among the unlettered, right? But ummiyin is saying someone that's true to their original nature, right? So his fitr was not destroyed by the Arab culture. His fitr was still intact. He was still having in him what he came forth from the universe with. It's like he was that atomic. I want to make sure I get that T in there. He was that atomic being as drawn from the creation. And then Allah revealed the Quran upon his heart, right? Allah revealed the Quran upon his heart, not even upon his mind, right? Because the mind would influence it, right? So, ba'athahu fil ummiyin, rasul minhum. He's a rasul. He was a messenger from them, right? So, never does Allah send a messenger but speaking the language of the people to whom He sent. You mentioned that 14th chapter, 4th verse of the Quran. So, rasul minhum yalu alayhim ayatihi, showing them how to follow the signs. That is decoding for them the signs. That's what the Prophet was doing. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi. He's showing them, okay, here's signs from God. See that sign? See that sign? The way you follow that sign is this. The way you follow that sign is that, right? Yatlu alayhim ayati. Then it says, wa yuzakihim. Is that what yuzakihim? Is that, and He's purifying them. That's the big key right there. The purification. The purification, it's like if you're looking at a dirty mirror, you ain't gonna see it straight. If your glasses are dirty, you're not gonna see straight, right? You know, if the water is dirty, you're not gonna see through. You're not gonna see through that. And so purification is the sensitivities, right? And so sensitivities. Listen, two things. It goes in a lot of ways. When you talk about capacity, then that means how much you could expand to capability. So capacity is like the room capacity is 500. Even when it's empty, the room capacity is 500. That means that it's capable of actually having 500 people in it, right? But just because the statement of capacity doesn't mean that it's filled out. It's only for us as human beings. When we move that capacity, the capability, when we fill out and when we actualize our capacity, now we have this capability, right? Now, what are we saying about sensitivity? Sensitivity is just activity in the senses, right? Activity in the senses. Sensibility is the ability to use your senses, right? Sensibility is the ability to use your senses. So for as far as sensitivity is concerned, it is your sensitivity is in your values, your sensitivity is in your emotion, your sensitivity is in your disposition. So the if you get the right education, that education will purify your values, purify your emotions, purify your disposition. That's what the prophet taught. He said, none of you is really a believer until his sensitivities follow what I have brought, right? So what you zakihim, what you alimuhum al kitab wal hikmah. See, we haven't even, we have kitab, now we're at kitab. What you zakihim, purified, right? None but the purified shall touch it, right? Okay, so you get the purification, then you pick up the Quran. Now you're in a better condition for what is shining from the Quran to come in, because your eyes are clear, your sensitivity is clear, the water that you're looking through are purified, right? So you're coming with the right heart to it. You zakihim. Then while you alimuhum al kitab, teaching them the science of the book, right? So the book is that physical thing, the physical thing that we're picking up. That's the science of the book, but that's not the end of it. As you mentioned in your presentation, it's not just reading the words, it's not just making the sounds. You have to move from kitab to the hikmah. The hikmah is the wisdom of how to apply what you read in the world. If you don't know how to apply what you read in the world, what good is it, right? So it all goes back to, first there's the prophet, then he shows that he's true to his nature, he's the model. Then he points out the signs and shows us how to follow them, and then shows us how to purify ourselves. You make wudu like this, you make prayer like this, you fast like this, purifies your sensitivity. Then he says, now when you pick up the book, you deal with it through those pure sensitivities, right? And then you'll be guided to the hikmah. You'll be guided to the wisdom. So that's all in just that recurring phrase in the Quran. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakihim wa yu'alimuhum al-kitab wal hikmah. That's a formula. That's like E equals MC squared. If we get that and practice that, we'll be in great shape. All right, I think we're gonna have to call it. You got any last words, announcements, etc. before we pull out?
No particular announcements at this moment, but I think we will by next Monday. I know Love is Always a Subject is working on doing a course on accountability. So I'll make that information available to any of the listeners. We're going to do like a 30-day accountability course where I call it the accountability click. Because sometimes we need to, it's just like, I can't help but to use working out as an example, but when there's a particular goal that you want to reach, it's good to have like-minded individuals with you to work through the process and hold you accountable to ensure that you're touching each steps. And then also I'll be available to give you actionable tools to ensure that there's small steps to lead to the big goal, and so we'll be meeting early on the phone, like you can either catch the pre-recorded or join us live at a good yummy 5 a.m. Early bird gets the worm, right? You'll catch it at Fajr, and kick off the day, right? This is just to build behaviors. So that's what we have going on. If you have any questions in regards to ACU Institute, make sure you email us at aclearunderstandingnow@gmail.com, where we want to welcome all of our new subscribers to the Institute. We are so very happy to have you there with us as we continue to grow and evolve and build what it is that we have. Tell a friend about this, our wealth creation conversation that we're having here every Monday, and the other schedule. We did send out the schedule via our newsletter. Tell a friend, let them know we want to engage and have an exchange and conversation. And so let us, inshallah, may Allah continue to bless us to get better, be better, and pour value into each other, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah, appreciate it. All right, thank you all. Everybody have a wonderful day. Inshallah, Wednesday morning you'll be back with us, and we're gonna keep going and keep growing. Allah's peace be on all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Goodbye.
All right, let's see. Let me get you back on here.
You're still live right now. Yes.